The book publishing industry is constantly in flux and ever changing, and that is especially so this summer. There have been two major news events that happened over the past month that have really shaken up the industry, and a lot of publishing professionals have taken to social media to talk about them and their ramifications on the book publishing landscape. So today I want to bring you up to speed on what these major news events are and what they mean for authors who have already been published, as well as those who are maybe in the querying process or hope to be traditionally published one day. It's true that the book publishing industry has always been tumultuous. It feels like it's especially tumultuous right now, and I really do believe in the value of educating yourself and learning more about how the industry works. Because if you do have the ultimate goal of getting your book published by a major publishing house, that is only going to set you up for you to have a better understanding of what to expect going into that process. That's why on my channel, I do try to give you insight into how the book publishing industry works, as well as news items like I'm going to today. So if any of that interests you, definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Every week, I either talk about the industry like I am today, or I give tactical tips for improving your book manuscript. I also have a free resource in the description below. It is called my Story Self-Assessment. That is a worksheet designed to help you identify the strengths and weaknesses in your current draft and figure out how to take it to the next level. So definitely go ahead and grab that. The best part is that it's going to sign you up for my newsletter, where I give exclusive tips that you will not find on my channel. So as I mentioned earlier, today I'm going to be going over two huge news items that shook up the book publishing industry in the past month and distill down what this means for authors who are either already in the publishing industry or who are looking to get their book published in the near future. I'm not claiming to be an expert by any means on these news topics, but I have been seeing them discussed quite a bit online and have read all of the news articles about them. So I'm going to try to give you as much insight as I can personally. But I definitely encourage you to read up on them independently after watching this video for some more in-depth insights. The first huge news item, potentially the biggest news item that has been covered in the publishing industry in recent history, to be honest, is the Department of Justice antitrust trial against the Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster proposed merger. So to get you up to speed on what's going on here, Penguin Random House put in a bid that was accepted to purchase Simon & Schuster, which is another one of the big five publishing houses. Now, the big five publishers in the US dominate the publishing market and control the vast majority of best-selling books. So they have a ton of influence in the publishing world. When we talk about getting a literary agent and traditionally publishing your book, typically you are looking at publishing via one of these big five publishers. There are a few smaller publishing houses that are still considered traditional publishers, but the big five are really the dominant ones. Now, with this proposed merger of Simon & Schuster and Penguin Random House, that's going to make the big five turn into the big four. And this has caused a huge stir among publishing professionals, among authors. They're concerned about what this will mean for the future of the book publishing industry. In fact, there was a huge petition that went out whenever the merger was first announced, and many publishing professionals, literary agents, editors at publishing houses, and authors signed this petition to try to stop this merger from happening. And now we are seeing the Department of Justice step in to conduct a trial and see if this merger would actually harm the industry and or everyone that it involves. So the trial concluded in August of this year, and it was watched extremely closely by people across the publishing industry. In fact, many were even live tweeting it, live reacting to it as the hearings were going on. Something that was really special about the trial is that it offered a window into an industry that is very much typically operating behind closed doors. Many people don't know how book deals work. Many people don't know how much authors make on their advances, or how publishers anticipate what books are going to be bestsellers or not. All of these topics were covered in the trial, and they were really illuminating to hear some of the top executives at Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster talk about them. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize the arguments on the Department of Justice's side, which is against the merger, and the arguments on the Penguin Random House / Simon & Schuster side, which is obviously for the merger. The argument by the Department of Justice is that this merger would make Penguin Random House, which is already the largest and most dominant book publisher in the US, potentially the world, even bigger and more dominant, and would significantly reduce competition among the Big 5 / Big 4 publishers. Because Penguin Random House is already clearly the industry leader, this is just going to bolster their position even more. The Department of Justice argued that this is going to result in lower advances, which is what the publisher pays an author for the rights to publish their book, and therefore authors are going to suffer and ultimately make less money because there is less competition in the industry driving prices up. The argument is that other publishers will not be able to seriously compete with this mega conglomerate Penguin Random House publisher. Now, in response to this, the Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster representatives argue that the imprint model of publishing houses allows for competition even if the companies are merged. So to explain this further, all of the Big 5 publishers are actually divided into basically a series of smaller publishing houses that operate somewhat independently within the big publishing house, and these are called imprints. So while there are only currently 5 major publishers in the US, there are hundreds of imprints that operate as part of the Big 5. The Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster representatives argue that the imprints within Simon & Schuster and Penguin Random House will still be able to compete and bid against each other as they do now, and therefore their argument is that competition will not be meaningfully reduced. However, the Department of Justice responded to that, saying that because Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster are going to be part of the same parent company, they still have the control to combine imprints, discontinue imprints, create new imprints whenever they want, and that would not be illegal. And therefore, this competition among imprints is not really enforceable. The Department of Justice also cited that a combined Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster would have 49% of the market share of anticipated bestsellers. With such a large market share, they could also arguably set new industry standards that could potentially harm authors, like lower royalty rates. Something else that was interesting on the Department of Justice side was that the author Stephen King actually testified for the side of the government and blocking the merger. He spoke to the potential harm, especially for newer authors trying to get their footing and established in the industry. So that is the anti-merger side. Let's talk a little bit about Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster's defense. Their argument is that the government could not prove that there would be consumer harm with the merger. They also said that the Department of Justice's argument about advances to authors are not really accurate because the marketing spend that goes into a book does not necessarily correlate to how much a publisher pays to get the rights to that book. They also said that P&Ls are often inaccurate. That is the profit and loss statement that a publisher has to run on any book that they want to purchase from a literary agent. So they figure out if they give this amount of advance to an author, how much do they have to sell to make back their money and make a profit? There was a lot of talk in the trial about how random the P&Ls are and how random the advance numbers are, which maybe doesn't necessarily inspire confidence in people who are looking into the publishing world for the first time. The CEO of Penguin Random House even said something like, everything is random in publishing and that's why we're called Random House. Well, I certainly agree with that to some degree. No one, not even executives, can anticipate what's going to become a bestseller. On the flip side, the Department of Justice seemed to have a hard time grasping that truly everything is random and publishing houses can't put more marketing dollars behind a book that they paid more for. So this was a huge point of contention in the trial. The other argument by Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster is that literary agents, who are a key component of the book deal process, would continue to enforce competition. And they argued that other publishers, the other 3 of the big 5, as well as smaller traditional publishers, do continue to win some of the biggest book deals year after year. Their argument that's pro-merger is that having the resources of a larger publisher, i.e. Penguin Random House, would benefit the authors currently at the smaller Simon & Schuster. They're basically saying, with our larger company, we will be able to support all of our authors in an increased capacity. That could be resources like marketing teams and distribution facilities, even partnerships with certain book retailers. There's a lot more nuance than I can get into in this video, but I hope that gives you a general overview of the different sides of the trial and what was being debated. As I mentioned, I do encourage you to read more on it and see quotes from the trial if you are interested in learning more. So now let's talk a little bit about what this means for writers. The judge is actually not going to give their ruling on the case until the fall, so ultimately we really just need to wait to see how it all pans out. Something that's really interesting is that this trial is completely unprecedented and there isn't any case law to cite, meaning that this is really going to set a standard for any potential future antitrust trials. And of course, it's obviously going to have a huge, huge impact on the book industry. The good news is that there are a lot of author advocates in the industry. This goes from professionals working at the publishing houses who just love books and that's why they work there, to literary agents who are authors' representatives, to other authors. They want to ensure that authors are paid fairly for their work and that this merger, if it goes through, does not do harm. They also want to ensure that the industry continues to promote diverse stories and diverse authors. So I'm hopeful that with the loud voices that there are in publishing, we will be able to continue supporting authors even if the merger does go through. So now let's talk about the other huge news item, which is Barnes & Noble's new policy on stocking hardcover books. So news spread on social media last month that Barnes & Noble announced they were going to limit the amount of hardcover middle grade books that they buy from publishers to stock in their stores. The implication was that they would only buy hardcover books from publishers that were anticipated bestsellers and not stock so many debut hardcovers. The argument from Barnes & Noble is that their return rate for middle grade hardcovers specifically was up to 80%, meaning that is the amount that they would return to the publishers unsold, and they want to reduce that by only stocking a select number of hardcovers. So immediately, authors, especially in the middle grade and young adult communities, as well as publishing professionals, took to social media and expressed their concerns with this new policy. They're specifically concerned about how this would hurt debut authors' careers. Because remember that hardcovers are typically the first edition published before the paperback edition. So authors who are debuts and who do not necessarily have an established readership, who are maybe not necessarily anticipated bestsellers to start, would therefore have less exposure in bookstores. And therefore, they maybe will never be able to reach that bestseller status because they're kind of stunted from the get-go. And many authors shared on Twitter that they actually can't find their books stocked in Barnes & Noble and in their local community. Diving a level deeper, there's a concern that this is going to disproportionately affect BIPOC authors who are already underrepresented and already marginalized in the industry. The argument by Barnes & Noble is that they're going to focus more on trade paperback editions, which are cheaper and arguably more accessible to the younger readers. So again, what does this mean for writers? Now, most book marketing efforts are geared toward the hardcover initial edition of a book. So if Barnes & Noble is not going to stock as many hardcovers, then potentially we will see publishers focus those marketing efforts on paperback editions or even start launching paperback original editions for middle grade and young adult. Otherwise, maybe these authors are going to struggle to break out and get more exposure. Also, I could see that publishers may increase their focus on other book marketing and publicity efforts like book talk that do not require someone wandering into a store and happening upon a new book, which of course is a huge means of book discovery currently. So I hope this gave you a deeper understanding of what is going on in the book publishing industry currently and how this news can affect new, emerging, and established authors. Let me know in the comments if you have any concerns about these issues, if you've heard people talking about them, what your perspective is. I'd love to have a conversation and hear what you think. If you're interested in my take on another big piece of publishing news earlier this year, I recommend checking out my video on resignations and shakeups in the publishing industry, specifically about a bunch of publishing professionals resigning from Big 5 houses. That'll give you some more insight as well. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget that free story self-assessment waiting for you in the description below. Thank you so much for watching and happy writing.